This fund is a long-only global equity fund investing in companies whose economic future is entirely determined by the artificial intelligence systems upon which those businesses are built. We will go wherever we can find those businesses, across sectors, across regions, and across market caps. So our investment process starts, as you would expect, with a liquidity screen to make sure that we are safe to own any of the companies that we are considering for inclusion within the fund. We then, within that liquidity-adjusted universe, look to uncover all of those companies that are meaningfully engaged in the artificially intelligent world. And that reduces that liquidity-adjusted universe by about 95%, 90 to 95%. It's within that group of companies that we then look to understand further how those companies are engaged in the artificial intelligence space, how broadly engaged they are, and whether it matters from an economic perspective, because, of course, what we care about is the ability to create economic value on the back of those artificial intelligence systems. Where we can find those companies, we use that framework to determine a maximal position size within the fund, and then we do a huge amount of bottom-up work as a team, understanding still further in granular detail how those companies function, what they do, where those sources of alpha and competitive advantages come from, and then looking to invest against that work. The biggest risk associated with the fund relative to other global equity funds is, of course, that we're wrong about AI. If AI doesn't end up being something that's meaningfully important from an economic perspective for each of the companies we invest in or for the economy as a whole, then clearly this fund is going to find it difficult. We try to minimise that risk as a function of the work that we do in the theme, to be fully on top of the theme that we're looking to invest behind, to understand as much as we can about how that theme's evolving both at the leading edge and in the commercial world, and how companies are using artificial intelligence systems to change their economic outlooks for their business and evolve their business processes. If we feel like if we can understand that risk in an acute fashion, then we're very well positioned to be able to manage that risk within the portfolio. So we use ESG tools significantly across our investment process. We're lucky in that our upfront screening for companies engaged with artificial intelligence systems tends to point us away from companies in the older parts of the economy which perhaps are less inflected by artificially intelligent activity. So we tend to have a very good profile from an emissions perspective within the fund, using any of the normal frameworks for valuing that. And we've used our own artificial intelligence systems in managing the fund since we launched our model in 2016. And in part of that process, we built our own ESG module on top of our AI in order to help us better understand what's going on inside the portfolio from an ESG perspective, and perhaps to better understand the evolution of the MSCI Sustainalytics scores and so on that are become some of the lingua franca around ESG over the course of the last 5 years, to better elucidate the fund's ESG positioning over time. So this fund we think of as being a plain vanilla global equity fund, albeit a global equity fund with a gale of a thematic tailwind that we think is going to blow at its back for many years now to come. Of course, we have a growth tilt within the fund, as you would expect within a fund that's investing behind one of the most exciting investment themes that we've seen over the last few decades. So some people would look at us as a global growth fund rather than a plain vanilla global equity fund, but we feel that either of those two views is reasonable. There are a couple of things that we're not. We're not a tech fund. We have, over time, only about 40-45% of the capital of the fund invested in the technology space. We're not a North American equity fund. We have about 30 to 40% of the capital of the fund invested outside of North America, so we would steer people away from considering us in those terms.